How does a brand that has established itself like that in the 80s make a comeback now and make itself relevant?
How these brands have lent into going viral or managing to capture an audience that before had never heard of them. Giblets in these holes.
Giblets.
Which I think are a part of a chicken. Giblets. I don't know how to talk about tech without sounding like someone I don't want to listen to.
And that's fair.
Does that make sense?
That's absolutely true. Let's get into it.
Okay.
What are we talking about today?
We're talking about brand buzz. Reviving dead brands and bringing them back to life. You can't avoid it when you walk around the office. Stanley Cups. Straight off the bat. You don't like the Stanley Cups.
I'm a no for the Stanley Cup.
See, I've gone through a journey with the Stanley Cups. I was sold when that first viral video came out of the burning car that literally burnt to a crisp, but the girl reached in and pulled a Stanley Cup out with ice in it still. It worked on me.
You were sold?
I was sold. I kind of loved the fact that they were uncool and then became cool.
Were they uncool?
Well, they were made for tradesmen. The whole point of them was to fit into a cup holder for a van with a massive quantity of liquid and keeping it hot or cold, which is not a cool thing. It's not a cool thing to keep something efficiently hot or cold.
But it is now, and that's the buzz.
They lent into it, didn't they? So that's part of what we're talking about today, is how these brands have lent into going viral or managing to capture an audience that before had never heard of them. It was a novel thing to Gen Z when they heard about a Stanley Cup, and the minute that they lent into it, they immediately started using UGC, reposting those videos. They recoloured all of their Stanley Cups, which I know you're not a big fan of.
The pastels.
The pastels, yeah, and the matte finishes and all the various colour combinations, which they kind of stole from Chili's and some of the other brands that had been doing well before. But they lent into it hard. And then I think beyond that, the number one reason that those became so successful was the scarcity. The second, they weren't geared up to actually manufacture for that audience and that pace. And so they ended up accidentally doing what Steve Jobs did with the original iPod, where they had millions of the things, but he said, I want cities begging for them before I allow them out into the public. And that's what Stanley did. They had people fighting over them at Target and Asda in the UK.
I think it's so obviously a fad, the Stanley Cup. The buzz almost outweighs the product. So somebody having the cup, it to me, that's just them following the buzz. And when my 9-year-old daughter and her friends start talking about wanting a Stanley Cup and you see it in their school bags, that has absolutely reached the other end of the line for me. That the buzz is no longer there.
Okay. So is that a when people zig, you zag kind of thing? Or is that a rejection of the modern trend, do you think?
For me, I don't know. I think maybe that's a rejection of the normcore.
Normcore, got you, yeah. I get that. And Stanley's a pretty normcore.
Of having a Stanley. But it's really interesting because I love the shape of a Stanley Cup. I think the design of it is a true classic. Like we've spoken before about Eames chairs and, you know, those classic cult objects. I love Stanley for that. But I guess I'm not the prime audience. So
should brands think of audiences as a prime audience, or should they be leveraging these things and trying to make sure that they can target yourself as well? What would Stanley do beyond a viral TikTok to get to Nat?
God, we'll be here all day if we're answering that question.
I think right now, Sabrina Carpenter, when it comes on, it's a bop. Like no matter which song it is, it's a bop, and I can't deny that.
Absolute kudos to Sabrina Carpenter.
Yeah.
I mean, what she's doing magnificently. And the buzz around her at the moment is insane.
Absolutely.
And she has her whole aesthetic. I mean, we've done the Charlie XCX thing and brat cool, whatever you want to call it at the moment. But I think Sabrina's nailed it, to be honest.
Yeah, Sabrina's absolutely nailed it. It's really interesting that you never know at which point of actually trying something's going to work. Mr. Beast, the largest subscribed YouTube channel in the world, did 12 years with about 5,000 subscribers. 12 years of Minecraft videos and different, I'm going to count to 1,000 videos and nonsense before anyone went viral. And Sabrina Carpenter, no one really spoke about her until about a year ago. And recently, she's absolutely blowing up, even though she's been trying for so long.
She's done a Miley Cyrus, hasn't she, effectively? She's not the first person to do it. She's not invented her look or her genre specifically.
No. but coming at it from a marketing perspective, you want to say full funnel approach, and I hate using that old adage, but it's multi-channel. You can't avoid her. You see Sabrina Carpenter on television, the most trusted format still in the United Kingdom. You see her on Facebook, shared across through Facebook mums groups and across the feed, across every sort of news outlet that you can imagine.
Oh wow, Facebook groups.
Oh yeah. Oh, still alive and pumping. They're very important, and actually, interestingly, Stanley used those as well. They were very infiltrating in the old Facebook mum groups, and Mumsnet was very influential in Stanley.
So everywhere we think we're seeing organic buzz, there's a marketing drive, isn't there?
Sabrina is everywhere. Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, every single platform that you can imagine.
So when I said Sabrina Carpenter is the new Miley Cyrus, that's the resurgence. That is the reinvention. She is the latest Miley or Britney of a generation. She's taken young, teen, sexy pop and recreated a buzz around it, but in a Y2K way. And the fashion angle is different, and it's slightly edgier, and she has the movie star boyfriend vibe, and she has the I don't give a vibe, but it is building on something that existed and went away for a long time because it wasn't cool. It just wasn't cool to like that, and she's the crock. She's invented herself in a way that makes her completely buyable to all sorts of audiences, to the mums to those mums who are on Facebook, who I can't believe she's turned around into like loving her and liking her and following her, although I do believe it's something to do with her boyfriend. But that's the resurgence, isn't it, for Sabrina, I think, personally.
No, I buy that. I buy that completely. I think it's interesting how different to Taylor Swift she is in a similar era where the Swifties are dominating social media and all conversation.
The opposite ends of the scale, but she's so mass market. She's never been away. There's been this constant Taylor buzz, whereas Sabrina, I know she's been around, and you've spoken about how long she's been around for, but she's new news.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. And I never thought of her in that light, in the Miley light, until you said it. But you're right; it's absolutely following something that's already existed. It's really interesting because watching people react to Sam Smith and reacting to like modern artists who are really open about their LGBTQ status and their gender fluidity, and it's really interesting watching people laud it and celebrate this, which they absolutely should. But that's not new either. David Bowie, Boy George, it's happened before. Androgyny and fluidity has happened before in the popular space. And it's interesting seeing it suddenly becoming a viral, successful thing now. And I feel like bratty is the wrong word, but I'm only saying that for Charlie XCX's.
How many times can we mention Charlie XCX?
As many times as possible. But to see that kind of edgy, but the white blonde pop star that's got a lot more going on than what you see on the surface and makes that very clear. I think that's really interesting to see that come back again.
Very clever. Very, very clever.
And do you think that, yes, and that's what I was going to ask, is do you think that that's definitely not Sabrina on her own going, this is my brand, this is how I'm going to be?
Maybe she's driving it, but there are a lot of people making that happen, I think.
Definitely felt like Miley was driving it when Miley made her swift change.
Oh, I like what you did there.
Yeah.
This is bigger than Crocs, I think. This is the whole ugly shoe movement, isn't it? I think we need to get into this in detail. Because I'm a fan of some ugly shoes. Others, the Croc, are an absolute no-go for me. But I'm very conscious of the ugly shoe trend.
Is it just shoes, or is it ugly fashion?
Functional. Function over fashion, traditional form. I don't know. Let's get into it.
Okay. See, I think it's ugly fashion. I don't like low-rise jeans. I don't like a baggy fit, and yet it's come right back around. I think the whole Y2K thing is ugly fashion. I think Oakley
Me too.
is ugly fashion. Ray-Ban have re-released 90s shades in the last 2 weeks that are horrible lime plastic, really thin. Like they look like Oakleys again, and they're horrendous to look at.
What is this? Can we pick it out by by brand, because there is the Croc phenomenon, which we could wax lyrical for hours. But then there's New Balance, and there are Birkis, and there are so many sort of brands that have really had a resurgence in this arena of functional, not that pretty, dad shoe.
Yeah. And just as the bars that I used to go to used to do an 80s night, now do a noughties night, seeing the same trend happen through with fashion that we used to wear that is terribly cringe, now happening as a popular Gen Z phenomenon. Maybe it's something that's always happened, that irony.
Maybe it is, but some of the brands that have really, really capitalised on it, were they ever fashion in the way that they are now? Like New Balance, we've spoken about New Balance before. Have. How many people in the agency have got New Balance trainers? Maybe they don't wear. Yeah.
Absolutely doesn't.
And 10, 20 years ago, they weren't being worn by anyone other than white middle-class dads, were they?
Steve Jobs was mocked for wearing his New Balances, Levi's and his turtleneck. That was mockery for it, because they were horrendous. They were the nerd shoes.
But like loads of other ugly shoe brands, they have been around for umpteen decades, and their brands were created because they fit a foot, or they were functional, or they were comfortable, or they were designed for people who had foot issues, and all those things, they fit into that category. So
that's not why people are buying them now.
No, it's not. But it's not like it's a trend that's come back round, is it? It's here now. I feel like properly for the first time, don't you?
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. Maybe it isn't the irony thing. I think these brands, a lot of them, like Geox, Clarks, Crocs, very functional. They start, when I was younger, I remember them being very like, this is, like you said, the perfect fit for a foot, and all the scientific benefits and orthopedic benefits of wearing this shoe. And I feel as though this new trend is almost an utter rejection of that, and they forget about all of that and actually embrace how ugly they are, to the point where, when something's so unfunny that it becomes funny again. I feel like they're so ugly they've become cool. And I think the second that Gen Z hop onto a trend like this, like socks with sandals or Crocs, for instance, and the second that they see Post Malone or Justin Bieber wearing a pair, that's enough. There's a lot of information on how people interact with influencers from like Gen Z. There was a period where Gen Z hated influencers, and now they like influencers.
Yeah, okay, brand partnership. The buzz created by brand partnership is huge, and has been huge for so many massive, like, old products coming back. Their whole change in marketing strategy, the marketing team came in, they appointed celebrities and ambassadors and influencers and went hard and heavy to make sure they were worn on people they just wouldn't be expected to. So you can kind of see how that applies, and how that marketing team and the marketing strategy has driven that buzz. Does that apply for other brands in the same way? I guess my question is it like that for all brands, or has the way that audiences have changed, particularly over the last 5 or 6 years, I see, where Gen Z are coming up, having lived through COVID, and a lot of our behaviour has changed a lot in the last 6 years, and I think that contributes to it for a certain audience, for sure. But where does that balance switch, do you think?
From the giblets to the various... Is it giblets?
Giblets.
Which I think are a part of a chicken.
Oh.
Right? That's what they're supposed to be? No, yeah, gibbets is the right terminology, okay. I've now learned.
So let's get back into the Croc chat.
Yeah, okay. Can do.
Okay.
Gibbets, they fit in these holes on a Croc. And what I was saying is, they have the Pandora effect. The second that you add something to your product that allows someone to customize it and further express their identity, the exponential growth is there, because Pandora did it, Thomas Sabo in a lesser way did it, and anyone where you
Swatch.
Swatch have done it, absolutely. Anything with a mix and a match that allows you to customize something makes you feel as though it's more personal, and there's loads of insights to back that up. But the whole idea that you could buy someone a gibbet for their birthday that feels very much them, or when individual YouTubers started releasing gibbets because of Croc seeding them out to them, it's an easy win for that brand to get more and more and more out of the existing users
And
they
I
have.
totally get that. I'm on board with it. I think the fact that a product can allow you to express yourself and change elements of your personality or your mood through gibbets is amazing. And lots of brands have done that in other ways, or lots of companies have done it in other ways. But what happens when you have saturated a market in a way that Crocs have? I mean, we don't have Crocs in our house. Confession, we don't have Crocs in our house. But for years, I've been taking the mick out of my cousins for having Crocs as house shoes. And lots of people had them as slippers and have segued into wearing them to work and wearing them to the supermarket, wearing them on the school run. And I think they've got that functional thing because like NHS workers will wear them because they're rubber-soled shoes. But they're literally everywhere, from like professional sports players in downtime to kids on the beach. Like, how do you keep the buzz going? Is it still through more influencers, more collaborations to keep them cool, or will that peter and they then become the old products that they were?
Crocs have managed to do the Shrocks, which are the Shrek Crocs with the little ears and everything in green. They've done the Lightning McQueen Crocs, which went absolutely viral when Ludwig wore them and bought them for £10,000 on his stream on YouTube and on Twitch. So again, using another brand within your brand and very cleverly seeding it and using lots of things that are popular elsewhere. There's no limit to what they can consistently capitalize on in that area. You can make a Croc anything.
I look forward to seeing the next Croc thing.
Might be a Sabrina Carpenter Croc. Who knows?
I think there are definitely products that, or brands, companies that have come to us before with a sales dip, and we've had to look at repositioning them, really looking at what makes the audience tick or what's going to cause a change in behaviour or reaction to things.
It's got to be Napoleon Grills, right? It's a fascinating brand. It's the only barbecue sold in Harrods. It's their £5,000 minimum when we started working with them, and that was a few years back now. And they're wonderful products, really functional, much like a Croc or a Geox or a Clark's shoe. Very functional, fantastic barbecues, fantastic grills. But their positioning was based on their American brand. They were in a place where they weren't being stocked in B&Q. They weren't being stocked in the places that people were shopping for them. And there was that same Stanley Cup effect. They were a very functional brand, very expensive functional brand, but didn't have a buzz around them.
And that's a UK buzz, right? Because I guess in the US, outdoor grilling, barbecuing, it's a sport.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
With our inclement weather, smaller gardens and space, I guess we really did have to look at a different way to approach things.
Yeah, and the insight came from a really different place. It came from the automotive industry. So the UK buy more convertible cars than any other country in Europe, with the worst weather in Europe. And it all comes down to that. That's what gave us the insight for the whole brand repositioning, which was Seize Summer.
So how did that apply when we looked at Napoleon?
Well, we took everything from their branding right back to basics. We stripped back the look and feel, the tone of voice, and we used that proposition of Seize Summer across everything, whether it was media, whether it was the way in which we spoke about the weather, the way in which we built the website to even include the weather's forecast and call it and rebrand it Napoleon Weather. And on top of that, I know you were very heavily involved with the actual look and feel. It was an era where Jamie Oliver and that particular upper middle class approach to cooking, barbecuing and entertaining was at its peak. And we took that, and I will admit there's a lot of lens flare in there. There's a lot of marble countertops, so are beautiful landscapes and fantastic homes and happy people eating and sharing and celebrating, instead of what it was before, which was a large fork with a large steak on it, which would work in America, but not necessarily in Middle England.
And we took that approach and leaned into a trend on outdoor living, I think.
Yeah.
It's something that the UK audience really wanted, but was unachievable on most days. But by actually making it fun and like showing people that they should go for it and really maximise those days, it worked.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And it took something that was as we said before, functional, that could advertise on its specs in another market, to a lifestyle brand. And that's a key thing that every brand that we've spoken about today has done. You don't buy a crop for the functionality, you buy it for the lifestyle. You buy it for what it means about you. And the same thing applies to those Napoleon grills. We didn't have the grills on their own with a cutout white background like an Apple product. We had them integrated into the garden, into that outdoor living, leaning into that trend, following the people enjoying it and seizing summer. And that's what changed the way that brand looked like and felt like in the UK. We had 650% growth within the first campaign quarter. It was monstrous.
That's a buzz.
Yeah.
So I would be really interested to see how Special K as an old product could make a return, because their whole marketing strategy was on dieting and how women should look a certain way in their red swimsuit that reflects the branding on the packaging, and the whole Special K diet that they promoted, eating 2 bowls a day. Like, how does a brand that has established itself like that in the 80s make a comeback now and make itself relevant? I would be really interested to see that.
Did they really recommend 2 bowls a day?
Need to check that, but yeah.
Wow.
Their whole marketing strategy was don't eat a lot of food.
Well, that's really interesting. If you walk into the kitchen at RBH right now, there are so many boxes of that Fulfill protein cereal.
Yeah.
And Surreal, that's a great example of a brand that has come out of nowhere and taken with force the entire market.
So the whole breakfast market has changed so much based on consumer behaviour. I don't think that's a trend.
No.
I could be wrong, but I think that's about how people now think about well-being, which is a trend. So actually, there are influences in there. But that is a brand I'd be interested in seeing. I'd try and make a buzz. Old Spice.
Oh, but they've never died, have they?
They weren't hugely popular for a long time. And then maybe 10, 15 years ago, had the resurgence with the new Old Spice man. Do you remember those
I
ads?
do. Well, of course I remember those ads. Those ads were massive.
Yeah,
that was the
huge.
era of YouTube advertising
Yes.
that was just crazy. It was Squatty Potty and Old Spice that just comes straight to my mind at that era.
Riding in on his horse.
Oh, yeah, with all of the most...
Bare-chested.
Yeah, and it was the era of Mighty Boosh being on television
Yeah,
and everything being about random humour. So
totally played
anything
into
it just was so natural to fit in with that.
Which worked so well for that period.
Yeah.
What would they do now?
I'll tell you what they should do now is they should follow what Manscaped have done and completely pivot the business, because it's companies like Manscaped, because the second they got them in on the hook on the, what was it, the crop duster or whatever they call it, one of their main products, every time you buy something from Manscaped now, they suggest the deodorants, they suggest their body sprays, and they suggest all their various just, beauty products. And now people are buying fully into brands that hook them in on those subscription services that are using nothing but sponsorships and partnerships and very playful language, which is very much the tone of voice that Old Spice had. But the playful language now has swapped to a much more in your face.
Yeah, it's extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah.